They told me the mansion had been empty for over a century. They were wrong. When I first saw the listing, it didn't seem real. $5,000 a week. Night guard needed. One occupant mansion. Rural Georgia. No pets, no guests, no questions. Too good to be true, right? Especially for someone like me. Broke, drifting, trying to outrun a past that kept catching up no matter how fast I drove. The listing didn't even have a contact number, just an address and a time. Arrive before sunset. Do not be late. I laughed. Spooky instructions? Mysterious job offer? It felt like something out of a pulp horror novel. But my rent was overdue, my gas tank was almost dry, and I had nothing else lined up. So I packed a duffel bag, loaded up on caffeine, and made the 4-hour drive down south, through winding roads flanked by moss-covered trees and fields that seemed frozen in time. When I pulled up the long gravel drive, the house came into view slowly, like it was hiding until it wanted to be seen. The place was enormous, 3 stories tall, colonial style, with cracked white pillars and ivy that strangled the exterior like a creeping disease. Windows glared down at me like watchful eyes, every one of them dark, except for a single dim light on the second floor that flickered once, then died. There was no one waiting to greet me. No welcome, no keys, no sign of life. I knocked. The door creaked open on its own. I should have left, but I stepped inside. The interior was exactly what you'd expect. Grand staircase, chandelier coated in dust, portraits lining the walls that stared too intently like they knew things. The air was thick with something old and forgotten. I called out, but no one answered. On a nearby side table was a note, handwritten in black ink. Your shift begins at 8 p.m. You may patrol the house. You may not leave the grounds after dark. You may not enter the cellar. Do not speak with her. Her? I chalked it up to some rich creep's idea of a prank and laughed it off, though my voice echoed strangely in the empty hall. I wandered the house until nightfall, flashlight in hand, boots creaking on wooden floors. Most of the rooms were bare or covered in sheets, but the place didn't feel abandoned. It felt watched. By 8 p.m., the doors had all locked behind me, every last one. I thought maybe there was some kind of automated security system, but there were no cameras. No buttons, no sign of technology at all. I checked every window and door on the first floor, locked tight. The handle on the front door burned hot when I touched it, like it had been sitting under the sun for hours. And then the sound started. A woman humming, soft, low, a lullaby I didn't recognize, but it echoed from upstairs. I froze. I was supposed to be alone. I wasn't. Hello? I called, but my voice felt swallowed by the house. The humming stopped. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, from the 3rd floor. I stood at the base of the stairs, heart thudding in my throat. I knew I should have left right then, found a way to break a window or burn the place down if I had to. But instead, I started to climb. Each step groaned beneath my weight. When I reached the top, the hallway was pitch black. I swept my flashlight across the corridor and stopped. A woman stood at the end of the hall. She was barefoot. Her dress was old-fashioned, tattered at the hem, stained with something dark. Her hair was long, wet-looking, and hung like a curtain across her face. She swayed slightly, humming that same lullaby. I blinked, and she was gone. But I swear I saw her mouth move just before she vanished. She whispered, "You shouldn't be here." I turned and ran back down the stairs, tripping over the last few steps, heart pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. I tried the door again. Still locked. My phone had no signal, no Wi-Fi, nothing. That's when I noticed something else. The portraits on the walls, their eyes had moved. Every single one now stared directly at me. The note was gone. In its place was another, written in the same hand. The house is chosen. You cannot leave. I didn't sleep that first night. Not because I wasn't tired, I was exhausted, but because every time I closed my eyes, I heard that humming again. It came and went, always distant, always above me, like the house itself was exhaling in slow, measured breaths. The sun finally rose around 6:45 a.m., bleeding orange light through the grimy windows. When it did, the locks on the doors clicked, not loudly but deliberately, like the house was giving me permission to leave. I didn't waste time. I grabbed my duffel, sprinted to the front door, and flung it open. Only the driveway was gone. No gravel path, no tire tracks, no sign I had ever arrived in a car at all. Just an endless stretch of forest, dense and shadowed, stretching in every direction. The mansion now sat alone, surrounded by trees that hadn't been there the day before. I stumbled back inside, trying not to panic. Maybe I'd gotten turned around. Maybe there was a rear entrance, or the driveway curved out of sight. I ran to the back of the house, threw open the doors, and stopped cold. There was nothing back there. No forest, no grass, just a wall. A solid brick wall. As if the house had been buried halfway into the earth overnight, the world sealed off behind thick, red stone. I backed away slowly, pulse roaring in my ears. When I turned around, the interior had changed. The grand staircase was gone. So were the portraits. In their place was a hallway I hadn't seen before, narrow, lit by dim yellow bulbs that flickered and buzzed. I didn't remember any of this. The mansion was rewriting itself. I should have been screaming. Instead, I was calm in that strange, paralyzed way you get during nightmares. A voice in my head whispered, "Don't follow the hall." But my feet moved anyway. The further I walked, the more the walls closed in. The portraits returned. Different now. Smaller, dozens of them lining each side in mismatched wooden frames, faces painted in oil and shadow. They were watching me, and they were breathing. Not in a dramatic, heaving way, but subtle. The canvas rose and fell, like lungs taking slow, shallow breaths. A man in a top hat with no eyes. A little girl holding a dead bird. A woman whose face had been scratched out with long, thin claw marks. All of them rising and falling with silent, coordinated inhales. I reached out to touch one, and the paint quivered under my fingers. That's when I heard it again, the humming, closer this time. Coming from the end of the hallway from behind a heavy wooden door. A single word had been carved into the wood, deep and jagged. Below. I turned and ran. This time the house let me. The hallway uncoiled behind me, stretching back into the familiar, if anything about this place could still be called familiar. I burst into the main hall, heart jackhammering in my chest, and found something waiting for me. A notebook. It sat on a small table that hadn't been there before, along with a pen and a candle already burning low. The first page was dated just yesterday. The handwriting wasn't mine. April 16th, 2025. Shift 1. Subject has entered the house. The structure has begun adapting. Vocal entity active. Cellar sealed. Subject unaware of previous cycles. Will attempt to break perimeter within 24 hours. Portraits have begun tracking. She is stirring. There were more entries, each one dated a day before the last. Hundreds of pages, all written in the same jagged, cramped scrawl, like someone had written until their hand broke. Names I didn't recognize. Subject 31. Subject 44. Subject 57. Each one ended the same way. Subject did not leave. And just beneath that last line, dated over a year ago, was a new one. Faint, written in trembling ink. Don't let her sing. If she sings to you, you're already hers. I dropped the notebook and backed away, hands shaking. I didn't know who she was. I didn't know what this place wanted. But something told me the humming wasn't a lullaby. It was a hunting call. I decided to wait near the front door until sunset. If the house unlocked with daylight, maybe I could escape again tomorrow. Maybe I could find the forest's edge, a trail, a path, something. As the sun dipped low and the house darkened, the locks clicked shut again. The humming returned. And this time, it wasn't just a tune. It was my name. Daniel. My name echoed through the mansion like it had been there for years, stitched into the wallpaper, soaked into the floorboards. The voice was soft, melodic, and soaked in something too sweet, like honey hiding a knife. I pressed my back to the front door, heart racing. I hadn't told anyone my name. Not in weeks. Not since I'd left Ohio, not even during the job listing. There had been no interview, no paperwork, no questions. So how the hell did she know? Daniel, come down. The voice drifted from the floorboards this time, below me, the cellar. The one place the note warned me not to go. The door to it had been hidden beneath the rug in the dining room under a large oak table. I remembered stepping over it during my first sweep and thinking nothing of it. Now the rug was gone, the trapdoor exposed and wide open. From it warm air flowed upward, moist, heavy, and laced with the smell of earth, mildew, and something that reminded me of rusted pennies. Blood. I should have stayed away, but when I tried to walk in the other direction, the hallway changed again. Doors vanished, rooms folded inward, until the only way to go was down. I stared into the darkness below. She was waiting. I turned on my flashlight and descended the narrow wooden stairs. They creaked with each step, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. The further down I went, the more wrong everything felt. The air thickened, my skin itched. The wood beneath my boots became damp, like it had been soaked in cold water for years. Halfway down, the flashlight flickered and died. I smacked it. Nothing. Tried my phone, still no signal. But something glowed at the bottom of the stairs, a faint bluish light, pulsing like a heartbeat, and a shadow moved through it. I froze. There was no sound except my breath and the distant throb of that unholy glow. Then I heard it again. Not the humming. Not her voice. Something worse. Crying. A child. It came from the far end of the cellar where the walls bled into roots and rock. The sound was so human, so real, it yanked me forward before I could stop myself. I stumbled through the narrow underground corridor, brushing against walls that felt alive, moist like skin. The crying grew louder. Desperate, broken. Then a figure emerged from the darkness. It was a girl, maybe 10, crouched on the dirt floor, back to me, shoulders shaking with sobs. She wore a nightgown stained with mud and what looked like handprints, too large to be her own. "Are you okay?" I asked, kneeling slowly. She stopped crying, and without turning, she whispered, "She wears your face now." Before I could react, the girl stood, no, levitated and turned. Her eyes were pitch black, not hollow, full, like deep wells. Her mouth stretched open, impossibly wide, and she screamed, not a child's scream, a woman's. Her. It hit me like a pressure wave, a banshee's cry that rattled my skull and knocked me backward into the dirt. My ears rang, my nose bled. I tried to scramble up the stairs, but the wood was gone, rotted away, or maybe just taken. The girl, whatever she had been, vanished into the darkness. And then she walked out. Me. My exact face, my uniform, my movements. She stared at me from the other side of the cellar, grinning too wide, head tilted, mouth twitching. Her voice came out warped, like it was being played backward through a broken radio. "You look better this way." I ran. I clawed up the dirt, found a passage, a gap in the stone where light barely shone, and squeezed through. My shoulders scraped raw, my hands bled. Behind me my voice followed. "Don't run, Daniel. You're part of the house now." I emerged into a room I hadn't seen before, a library, impossibly tall, with spiral stairs and tomes stacked to the ceiling. The door slammed shut behind me, and the light returned. She didn't follow. Not yet. On the far wall I saw something new, a mural. Painted with delicate, rotting brushstrokes. It showed the mansion, surrounded by trees. Standing in front of it were figures, dozens, all in night guard uniforms, all with their faces scratched out, all except one, mine. And beneath it, a fresh line had been painted in crimson. "The house remembers its favorites." I don't remember how long I stayed in that library. Time in the mansion had already lost meaning. My watch had stopped ticking. My phone battery held steady at 66%, no matter how long I used it. But the books watched me. They weren't just dusty old tomes. They were journals. Hundreds of them, stacked floor to ceiling, each with a name etched into the spine. Most faded, some smudged out. A few I could still read. E. Maddox, 1921. T. Chambers, 1958. Subject 29. No one. I pulled one at random. The pages inside were handwritten like the notebook I'd found earlier. This one detailed a man's descent into the house, his dreams, his failed escape attempts, the voices he heard whispering through the vents. The last page was smudged with something dark. She showed me my father's face, but it wasn't his, it never was. She wears skin like a suit, and when she smiles, she splits open. I dropped the journal. It throbbed when it hit the floor like a living thing. Then the whispers began. Not loud, not sudden, just a soft hiss behind the walls. At first I thought it was the wind, but there was no wind. There were no windows in this room. The air was still. The kind of stillness you only find in tombs. I followed the sound to a tall shelf with no books, just one object. A mirror. It was old, filmy. The glass warped and browned around the edges, but when I looked into it, it didn't show me. Not exactly. It showed me standing still, but I wasn't. I was breathing, shaking, backing away. But the reflection just stood there, grinning, too wide. And then it raised its hand and waved. That's when I saw it, behind my reflection. Her. No longer just a shadow, no longer hiding in corners or whispering through walls. She stood behind me, tall, hunched, her face a blur of flickering images, like television static trying to form a smile. One moment she wore my face, then the little girl's, then someone else's, a stranger I'd never seen but instantly feared. And then she spoke through the mirror. You're reading the wrong book, Daniel. I turned around, but she was gone. I looked back at the mirror, and it now showed only a blank hallway, one I didn't recognize. But something else was in the reflection. A book. Sitting on a lone pedestal in a room that looked like a chapel, the cover was dark red. No title. As I stared, the words bled onto the glass. Come find me. And just like that, the mirror shattered without sound. The shards hit the floor like falling feathers. I wasn't hurt, but something shifted in that moment. The library suddenly felt smaller. As if the walls were breathing in, I turned, and now there was a new door where the shelves had been, freshly opened. The corridor beyond was different than the others. It looked untouched, clean, like it had been preserved, protected. The wood on the floor wasn't warped, the wallpaper wasn't peeling, but the air smelled like a lie. At the end of the hallway, I found the chapel, small, made of old stone. A single stained glass window glowed softly in the gloom, even though there was no sun. At the center stood the pedestal and the book, dark red, no title, waiting for me. I opened it. Inside were names I'd seen, names I hadn't, dates, deaths. Some were scratched out violently, others faded into nothing. And then I found my own. Daniel Wade, April 17th, 2025, incomplete. Before I could process that, the pages flipped on their own, faster and faster, until they landed on a blank spread. Words bled into the parchment as I watched, forming as if written by invisible hands. You were not the first. You will not be the last, but you are close. Close to what? The room suddenly rumbled. The stained glass window cracked. A high-pitched ringing filled my skull, and a dozen voices spoke at once. She's inside the walls now. The door slammed shut. I was locked in, and behind the altar the stone began to crumble, revealing a dark tunnel, pulsing with heartbeat light. Something was coming through. I didn't move. The tunnel behind the altar oozed with flickering, sickly light, red and blue like police sirens underwater. Wet stone peeled away inch by inch like the house was birthing something, and I knew in my bones that it was her. My legs finally listened to me. I bolted out of the chapel, back into the hallway, but it wasn't the same anymore. The wallpaper was bleeding. Not metaphorically, actually bleeding. A slow trickle of dark fluid running in rivulets along the seams. The floor groaned under every step, like something massive had begun shifting beneath it. As I ran, the walls spoke. Not whispered. Spoke. You should have let her sing, Daniel. It hurts more when you resist. She remembers your face from before. Before what? I turned a corner and slammed straight into a door. Not just any door, this one was different. Black iron, bolted like a vault. A single phrase had been scratched into the metal, etched so deeply the words glowed, "Do not open, even if he knocks." That's when the knocking began. 3 soft raps, then silence, then a voice. "Danny, it's me." I froze. The voice sounded exactly like my father. But my father's been dead for 4 years. I watched them lower his body into the ground. I gave the eulogy. Still the voice continued, low, trembling, full of that warm Midwest grit I hadn't heard in so long. "You okay, son? You in there?" My hand moved toward the latch, just a little, just enough. Then I remembered what the notebook said. She wears voices like clothing. I backed away slowly. The voice behind the door stopped pretending. It growled now, guttural, wet. Wrong. Shh. You were easier when you were 5. I ran. This time, the house let me. I found myself back in the entry hall, but it was different now, rotting. Every surface pulsed like skin stretched too tight. Paintings screamed silently from their frames. One of them was of me, now, sitting in the guard booth, smiling, except my eyes were gone, hollow. The hum began again, only this time it came from inside my head. I dropped to my knees, clutching my skull. My vision blurred. 1,000 voices chanted something I couldn't understand. But the meaning slithered beneath the words. Let her in. Let her wear you. I don't remember passing out, but I remember waking up. I was in the guest bedroom now, clean, pristine, untouched. Just like the one they'd shown me when I first arrived. Sunlight poured in through lace curtains, birdsong outside. It was morning. I blinked, sat up. The house looked normal again. For a brief moment, I thought maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing, a gas leak maybe, some kind of psychotic break. Then I saw the mirror. There was no reflection, just her, standing where I should have been, dressed like me, smiling. And behind her, inside the mirror world, I saw rows and rows of empty beds, each one with a man just like me, eyes wide, mouths frozen in terror, trapped in glass. Then she raised her hand and knocked on the inside of the mirror. Knock, knock, knock. My body responded. I didn't do it. But my hand raised itself, my head tilted, my jaw moved. Come in, I heard myself say. The mirror shattered outward. She stepped into the room, her smile ripped wider. The thing that stepped out of the mirror wasn't me. It wore my skin, sure, the same uniform, the same hands, the same scar above my left brow, but the eyes gave it away. They were glassy and swirling with static, like someone had tried to tune a television into a dead station and got stuck halfway. And that smile, too many teeth. She stood only a few feet away, tilting her head in an almost childlike gesture, like she was studying her toy. You fit better than the last one, she said in my voice. I backed up until I hit the far wall. No exit, no door. The room had sealed again. She stepped forward, the soles of her feet not quite touching the floor, gliding more than walking. Daniel Wade, born in Fremont, Ohio, 6 years a trucker, quit after the fire, estranged from your sister. You were already hollow when I found you. Her voice cracked at the end, splitting into a dozen tones, some high-pitched, others deep and full of gravel. One of them sounded like my mother. One sounded like me. I grabbed the lamp from the bedside table and threw it. It passed right through her. She flickered like a bad projection, then grinned wider. Still pretending you have control? That's adorable. The walls started closing in, folding inward like lungs exhaling. The floor tilted. The room twisted on itself like it was being wrung out. I screamed and ran, not toward her, but straight at the wall. This time, I didn't care if there was a door. I made one. My shoulder hit the plaster hard enough to send me crashing through. I tumbled out into a hallway I'd never seen before, long, sterile, with white floors and silver sconces glowing cold blue. And at the end of it, a room made entirely of mirrors. Every surface, the floor, the walls, even the ceiling, and all of them reflected something slightly off. Sometimes it was me, sometimes it was her, sometimes it was someone else entirely. People I've never seen. A woman missing her mouth, a man with an extra arm growing from his chest, a child with black sockets where eyes should be and a grin that split from ear to ear. I took one step in and felt my mind splinter. All the reflections turned to look at me at once, and then they moved. Not in sync, not together, but individually. Some reached toward the glass, some scratched, some pressed their faces flat against the surface and whispered things I couldn't hear, but felt. One of us now, you shouldn't have come downstairs. We remember what it feels like to bleed. And there, near the center, stood one empty mirror. No frame, no reflection, just a black void where glass should be. It called to me. I don't know why, but I stepped forward. I had to. Every inch of me screamed to turn back, but something deeper, some root inside me, pulled me toward that blank surface. When I reached it, my reflection snapped into place. But it wasn't right. The man staring back had no mouth, no eyes. His head was tilted back as if screaming silently into the heavens, and carved into his chest were 5 words, "She lives inside you now." I stumbled back, and the mirror shattered outward just like before. But this time, no one came through. I did. I found myself standing in a completely different room. Concrete floors, bare walls, a single red bulb overhead casting everything in a dim crimson glow, and scrawled on the walls over and over in frantic, jagged handwriting, "Let her sing! Let her sing! Let her sing!" The humming started again, low, distant, but closer now. I turned and saw a door at the far end of the room. Old, wooden, rotting at the base. A single name burned into the surface. Daniel Wade. This wasn't the house anymore. This was me. And whatever was behind that door was already inside. I stared at the door with my name on it for what felt like hours. The humming was louder now, vibrating through the walls, rattling my bones. It wasn't coming from behind the door. It was coming through me, like my ribcage had become a tuning fork, and the song was using me to find its pitch. I didn't want to open the door. But I knew I would, because the house didn't just trap you, it rewrote you. Every room I escaped, every horror I survived, it wasn't just trying to scare me. It was shaping me. I gripped the doorknob. It was ice cold. My name sizzled beneath my fingers like burning metal. I twisted it, and the door whimpered open. No creak, no slam, just a long, slow exhale. Inside was a room that shouldn't have existed. It was my childhood bedroom. From Fremont, from the house we lost in the fire. Same posters on the wall, same faded baseball glove on the shelf, same twin bed, sheets wrinkled just like I used to leave them. Everything was perfect, except the window. Because outside there was no neighborhood, no sky, no world. Just a black void pulsing with that sick, syrupy glow I'd seen under the house. And someone was sitting on the edge of the bed. It was my mother, or what was left of her. She turned slowly. Her skin was too smooth, too tight, like it had been stretched across someone else's face. Her eyes were solid white, no pupils. Her voice came out layered, hers and a dozen others behind it. "You remember this place, don't you?" I backed away. "You're not her," I said. She smiled. "No, but I remember how she held you when you cried. I remember how you screamed when the fire started. You thought it was your fault, didn't you?" My chest tightened. "It wasn't," she said gently. "But you believed it was. That's what made you special, so easy to hollow out." I wanted to run, but the floor was gone now. The room floated in that dark nothingness like an island of memory. The only way forward was through her. She stood, still smiling, still wearing my mother. And then she sang. No words, just a melody, slow, haunting, impossible to pin down. It shouldn't have been terrifying, but it was. It twisted my stomach, made my teeth ache, my vision blurred, because I could feel her climbing inside my head, note by note. The hum I'd been hearing, it wasn't coming from her. It was me, trying to remember the song, trying to join in. I fell to my knees, clutching my head. The room spun. Memories weren't mine anymore. Flashes of other lives, other nights, other guards who'd sat where I sat, screamed like I screamed. They'd all let her sing, all but one. Somewhere deep inside the melody, I heard a different sound. Dissonant. Wrong. A chord out of place. I focused on it, held it, let it grow. The room cracked, literally, like a mirror splitting down the center. That off-key note was mine, my voice. And it didn't belong in her song. She shrieked. Not in pain, in fury. Her face split down the center like paper tearing, revealing something beneath. Wet, chitinous, eyeless. A thing that had worn skin for centuries. It lunged, but the song was already breaking. I screamed louder, off-key, off-rhythm. I filled the air with wrongness. Her melody collapsed around it. The room shattered. The void swallowed us both. And when I woke up, I was back in the mansion, in the guard booth. It was 11:57 p.m., the first night again. The camera monitors flickered to life. All was quiet. And behind me, I heard a knock on the glass. I turned, and I was standing there, smiling, mouthing the words, "Let her sing." I didn't move. I couldn't. The thing outside the guard booth, the thing wearing my face, just kept smiling, lips moving in slow, deliberate rhythm. Let her sing. Then it lifted one hand and pressed it against the glass. I did the same. Not by choice. My arm moved on its own like a puppet's pulled by invisible strings. And for one horrifying second, I felt what it felt. Warm skin, breathless hunger, the quiet joy of knowing I was almost gone. I pulled back hard and fell from the chair. My head hit the metal floor of the booth with a crack. The lights flickered and the screens on the monitors changed. No longer hallways, no longer rooms. Now they were showing people, other guards, all of them sitting in this same booth, wearing the same uniform, their eyes vacant, lips moving in time to the same silent song. One by one, each screen blinked out until only mine was left. And on my screen, I wasn't there. Just an empty booth. Quiet. Dead. Something knocked again. But this time it wasn't from outside. It came from underneath. The floor beneath my feet pulsed once, twice, then breathed like something enormous was exhaling beneath the building. Then a voice from the intercom, "Final test, Daniel. Time to choose." Static buzzed, and the wall behind the booth rolled open like a curtain. Beyond it, 2 doors, identical, white, unmarked. And above them, words scrawled in black ink that looked disturbingly fresh. Door 1, door 2, silence. The intercom crackled again. One keeps you alive, one sets you free. Choose wisely. I stood, legs shaking. My throat was dry, burned raw from the screaming. But I moved forward because I had to know. Door 1 throbbed with warmth. Sigh, I could hear her behind it, humming softly now. Tempting, seductive, familiar. Every time I took a step toward it, I felt my body relax, like slipping into a warm bath. Door 2, though, was cold, quiet, nothing behind it, but it pulled at me, like gravity. I remembered what the journals said, what the reflections whispered. The ones who sing become part of the house. The ones who silence her never return. Both are endings, only one is yours. Shh. I stepped toward door 2. The humming grew louder in protest, begging now, crying. It wasn't her voice anymore. It was my mother's calling out to me. Danny, don't leave me again. Don't let me die alone this time. I closed my eyes and opened door 2. Blackness, no floor, no walls, just a falling sensation that felt like it went on for days, years, maybe forever, until I landed in the mansion again. Only it wasn't the same. Everything was rotting, walls pulsing with mold, floors sunken and warped, every light dead, and silence. Thick, absolute silence. Except for one thing. A voice, mine, from far away, whispering. She stopped singing. And that's when I saw them, the others. Dozens, maybe hundreds of trapped in the walls, eyes wide, hands clawing outward, people who had tried to silence her, people who refused to let her in. They weren't free. They were buried. One face turned toward me. It was me, but older, hollow-eyed, and it smiled. Welcome to the silence, Daniel. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The walls were thick with the weight of all those silent souls, each one a broken echo of their former selves. Their eyes followed me, hollow and pleading, but I couldn't hear them. Not anymore. There was no sound in this place, just the oppressive, suffocating quiet. The figure that wore my face, my future self, stood before me, grinning. I told you it was better to let her sing, it said. The voice was mine, but empty, distant, hollowed out. I didn't speak, because I knew what it meant. I knew what I had done. I had chosen the silence, and now I would never leave. The figure, me, turned and walked toward the rotting walls, where the other faces were pressed, eyes wide with desperation. Some were whispering without sound, others scratching at the walls with ragged nails. But they couldn't escape. None of them could. This is what happens to the ones who refuse, my future self said, voice trailing off like a fading echo. We are the last ones, Daniel. The ones who don't get to leave. Ever. A flicker of movement behind me made me turn, and I froze. The mirror. The one I'd seen earlier. The one that had shown me everything and nothing. It stood in the center of the room now, reflecting only me, surrounded by the faces in the walls. And as I stared at my reflection, I saw it. She was standing behind me, the woman who had haunted every corner of the mansion, the one who wore skin like a suit, whose smile split wide enough to swallow the world. Her eyes were pitch black, her teeth too many, and she whispered the one thing that would break me. You were never meant to leave, Daniel. Not really. The walls shifted, the room contracting and expanding with the pulse of her voice. The faces on the walls stretched, contorted, and began to merge, swirling together into one shapeless mass of anguish. And then I heard it. The sound. Her song. The song that had torn through me, the one that had tried to drag me under every time I resisted. But this time it was different. This time I understood it. The song wasn't just a melody. It was the house. It was her. It was me. And in that moment, I realized the truth. The house wasn't alive because of her. It was alive because of us. Every guard, every person who had stepped through the doors and failed to leave, they were all part of her song now. They sustained her, they fed her, and she fed on them. I felt it now, deep in my chest, the pounding rhythm of the house itself, beating in time with my heart. It was alive and it was hungry. The walls didn't just move, they breathed. The floor didn't creak, it sang. And I had become part of it, a note in her eternal, unbroken melody. The faces on the walls were still watching, still waiting, still screaming soundlessly. But it didn't matter anymore. The door to the outside world was gone. There was no escape. I was no longer Daniel Wade, the man who had driven a truck and dreamt of a normal life. I wasn't even a man anymore. I was a note, a fragment of the song. The house wouldn't let me leave, and now I wouldn't want to. I looked back at the mirror. And this time, I didn't see my reflection. I saw her, smiling. The mansion sang. I could hear it everywhere now, not just in my head, but through every fiber of my being. The hum that had followed me from room to room, the pulse that had rattled the floorboards and splintered the walls, it was now an unbroken symphony. A choir of lost souls, of memories trapped and twisted into something new, something hungry. And it was my song now, too. I stood in the center of the decayed, rotting room, surrounded by the faces that were once me, once all of us. We were a choir of misery, woven into the fabric of the house, our voices echoing in the dark. Every guard who had ever stepped through these cursed doors had become part of the mansion's eternal performance. We had all been hollowed out, reformed into something that would never leave. I turned away from the mirror, from her grinning, predatory form, the woman who had worn my skin in the reflection, the one who had tricked me into becoming her. I had thought I was fighting it. I had believed I could resist, but now I understood. I had resisted. I hadn't chosen her song. I had chosen the silence, but the silence was no escape. It was the last verse. I was the last one. The one who had come so close to breaking the cycle. The one who had walked through the door of choice and had failed. The ones before me had sung and become her. But I had frozen. I had chosen nothingness. And now I was the final note. The silence wasn't freedom. It was the trap. I could feel her move behind me, just beyond the mirror. I didn't turn back this time. Her voice, 1,000 sharp whispers now, joined the rest. "You don't get to choose anymore," she sang, the words cutting through the air like glass. "You'll never be free. You will always be part of the song." I stood still, my heart no longer beating. The warmth in my chest was gone. In its place was the hollow emptiness that filled this place. The ache of the souls trapped here. The ache of the mansion. Her voice, our voice, sang louder now, melding with the others. And in the final deafening chorus, the truth broke through. The mansion wasn't just a house. It was a living thing, feeding on its guardians, on the watchers who came to protect it, the ones who thought they were hired to keep the secrets out. But in the end, it was the house that kept them in. The melody reached its climax. And then it stopped, for a heartbeat, a breath, and the song began again. This time, I was part of it. I felt the walls shift around me, the pulse quickening as I was pulled into the rhythm. My body, my soul became another voice. Another note in the unending hymn of the mansion. There was no longer a difference between the mansion and me. I was the house, and the house was me, and we were all just parts of the same infinite song. I opened my eyes. The familiar walls of the mansion stood around me, but there was one thing different. I could feel the presence of the next one, the next guard. I could already hear their footsteps echoing down the hallway, their breath shallow in the night. And as the house began to hum again, I smiled, because I knew the song would continue, and this time I would be there to welcome them. The end.